Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Thom and Joe Show. I'm Joe.
I'm Tom.
And again, we are probably going to be listening to me talking a whole lot and Tom just listening because we are finally getting to a number anime choice that's mine, and I figured we had waited long enough. We were doing Kino's Journey.
Yeah. We've done two numbered episodes almost in a row. This is a new record. We're back.
Yes. I figured we needed to get this one. I don't know. It's one of my favorites, but it's an anime I can choose for anybody.
Yeah.
Except for the people who don't want to listen to anything outside of their worldview.
Yeah.
Which, But anybody listening to this, you can watch Kino's Journey right now and get enjoyment out of it. It is a series for anybody. It is the first series I will recommend to anybody who likes anime or who wants to get into anime but doesn't like anime or like the anime that gets really popular. And I'm not trying to be a hipster here. It's just like the power creeping and people screaming their names superpowers and all that. That's not for everybody. That's people are gonna watch this and be like, I'm kind of embarrassed right now and are too self-conscious about it, which I get. I mean, I'm self-conscious about anime because I exist everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So I'm with normal people who have like houses and boats and shit, and the weird people who would rather have a gigantic manga or anime collection than a giant house or a boat. So
and I know people who have both. Yeah. Anyway, so we today are talking about Kino's Journey, and this has a subtitle which I now can't remember. Because it's important to note, there's an important thing to note about this before we go any further. There are two Kino's Journeys anime. Yeah. There is what we are talking about today, and the other one,
which is the modern one, which came out in the late 2010s, early 2020s.
2017 apparently.
Okay. I was still working for Infinite Rainy Day. Yeah. I wrote a review on it, so it would have been before the pandemic. All right. And this one is 2004.
2003.
It is 2003. Okay, yep. 2004 was more of its domestic release.
Yep.
Because I was watching through the DVD, so it's just like 80 Vision 2004.
Yeah.
So anyway, to sum up what this is it's a little bit of the Twilight Zone going on a road trip in the country. That's the best way I can explain it, but it's not like any of it. It's like a lot of things you've seen, and it's like nothing you've seen.
Yeah.
And it's based on a series of short stories for light novels by Kiichi Sugsawa, who is one of Japan's foremost gun rights activists. Don't let that fool you. A gun rights activist in Japan is not the same as a gun rights activist in America.
Yeah.
He also worked on the Gun Gale Online version of Sword Art Online, which I have no interest in Sword Art Online. I watched the side version of it. They made one anime of it. They're making another one soon. It's very good. And I'm not interested in anything Sword Art Online, just, from what I've heard. And and just because I don't want all of this, everything is an online RPG, or everything's like isekai into your favorite RPG or whatever else. I need other stories. And Kino's Journey, the translation can be a little... there's, a debate on the translation, because it's Kino no Tabi. It's Kino's Travels. It's most people think it should be more literally, because
Yeah.
Kino's not on a journey to anything. Like, they are traveling across, the various countries of the world, and they can only stay in for 3 days, and they're with their talking motorcycle, or motorad as it's called in this series, Hermes. And they experience it, and every country has a thing. It's the biggest difference between the 2003 version and the 2017 version is the 2017 version is more literal.
Yeah.
And that had a lot of reviewers, like Anime News Network and other people who are watching it, like, question, how does this country operate? Or thinking very little questions. What this one does is, there are various countries of various technology, but it keeps it in a turn of the century, like, I want to say about 1920s, something like that. Like 1900s to 1920s kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
Even if it's in the future, it's still people in top hats and suit coats, like, on hovercraft. So what this does is it makes it more like Fables or something like that, where it's a fairy tale. It is something that is not meant to be taken literally. It is meant to,
metaphorical.
like, glean something. It's metaphorical, and it's a discussion about ideas, and it turns a lot of the ideas of the world on its head and looks at it. I don't think there are very few, like, morals, like, underlined, except that fascism is shit, slavery is bad, and fuck all of those things and destroy it. Yeah. Like, it's not one of those where we have to keep everybody's opinions in mind. There are lines it crosses, and throughout the series, it will cross a whole lot of them. So it's not just, both sides saying it has lines, they do get crossed, and there are repercussions for when they do get crossed. And so,
so I think we're going to go back a little bit. So Sig Sauer is actually a pen name. He's taken his pen name for his pen name Sig Sauer is actually taken from the Sig Saucer. This guy loves guns.
Yes, very much so. And from which most of this series gets a lot of its style from is the illustrations by Kohaku Kuraboshi.
Yeah, who's obviously who's Sig Sauer's, like, basically in. They have worked on basically everything that Sig Sauer has written. Kuraboshi has drawn, basically. So that includes the Tales of a Single Continent series, which comprises of Alison, Linden and Trez, and Megan Seron. The last of which I believe has an anime series. No, Alison and Lila has an anime series made in 2008. I know very little. This is like getting on to fairly bleak and quite thing. They seem to be set in a sort of steampunky sort of universe. I suppose one could easily compare to sort of something like Last Exile. All of these three series take place in the same sort of post sort of First World War sort of world-ish, I think is fair to say.
Yeah, there are steampunk aspects, but it's not strictly chained to that idea.
No.
But Kuroboshi's illustrations are very stark. They use a lot of shadow, and it's angular in a way. It's still anime style, but it's angular in a specific way. And to get to the anime part of it, it is very admirable how the 2003 version just takes everything that's a part of this series and just either expands it or adapts it and makes it like this feels like the perfect adaptation of it. And Sig Sauer was on board with it, or at least I can assume was on board with it, because he even wrote the lyrics to the closing theme, which is The Beautiful World. And that is one of the main themes about this, like the world isn't beautiful, therefore it is. And they say that up front. But getting onto the staff of it, The director is Ryotaro Nakamura, one of the best directors who has sadly passed. He died of cancer, that rat bastard cancer.
Yep.
And he has been one of the, like, biggest, I think you would say, cult directors.
Yeah.
He has had some, like, mainstream, but he is mainly known as the director of Serial Experiments Lain, which was the big crossover hit that made a name out of, like, everybody involved with that.
Yeah.
So he has also done plenty of other things.
Yeah, he's got a fairly interesting, thing. So he did, obviously stuff on. I mean, everybody in Japan, every animator in Japan has worked on Lupin at some point. But he also did a lot of the animation for Space Adventure Cobra. A couple of he did animation for the Final Fantasy Unlimited series. Oh god.
And he was the chief director of Colorful, which is not the Colorful the movie about suicide.
No.
It is the Colorful, the one that's about panties.
Yep.
It is a comedy series which is a bunch of shorts on panties by various directors, but he is the chief director. He is the one whose name is on it. So there's that. He did Ghost Town, which was reuniting with the writer of Serial Experiments Lain, and that one was fine. I guess it's just like it didn't need to be a 2-core series given how slow it runs at 28 episodes.
And it's pretty much the most recent thing that Masamune Shiro has done, which is not just hardcore porn.
Oh, that's not Masamune Shiro.
Oh, yes, it is. The series was created by Masamune Shiro.
Ghost Town? Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Ghost Town. All right.
Masamune Shiro.
All right, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, that's what it says. He also, so there's also obviously Despero, which was a series he was going to work on, which is now just stuck in development hell because I don't think it will ever. It is. Chikai.
The last update was made during the pandemic. It was supposed to be made like. It was supposed to reunite Yoshitoshi Abe, the illustrator, the writer of Lain, the director of Lain, and they were going to go back and have this like. The story is written, but they need to work out budget things and they need to work out a director, which I don't think they will have because Ryotaro Nakamura is like a special director in that he can handle the various tones and everything. What I explained it in one of my essays of Infinite Rainy Days, he's the glue that holds everything together.
Yeah.
Like he is able to take the voice of whatever work and make it clear while adapting the source to make the best series he can.
Yeah,
and there
definitely.
are plenty of examples of this in Kino's journey, and we'll get to them once we talk to the show proper.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we're never getting desperate for one other reason, which is Chikai J. Konaka has gone completely off the off the deep end.
And for those who don't know, Chiaki Kanaka, he wrote Lain. I tried not to bring up his name just because I didn't want to get into this discussion, but he did Digimon Tamers. And he did an extra episode during the pandemic, and like the villains were like cancel culture or something like that. And then once everybody went down that road, he's a 9/11 truther, and he it's just basically he took too much of his own supply because he's always been a conspiracy theorist, but it's always been like felt like the X-Files conspiracy theory kind of thing, where it's kind of fun and it's kind of weird to go down these roads, but he like went all in on it, and that's kind of been the end of it.
Yeah, now he's at the end. Now he's gone down the rabbit hole. Yeah. Anyway, but we'll get back to Kino's journey now. So, obviously the main obviously, and the soundtrack by this is, because this is going to be an interesting thing for this episode, I'm going to have to sort of soundtrack this in our non-standard way because the soundtrack has never been formally released.
No. And I think there's a good reason for that. The music is by Ryo Sakai, and the best way I can explain this series is everything feels like it is organic to the series. Like the sound, the visuals, like the way it's edited, like how it goes into like Kino's thoughts, and there are these words, and there will be these words, and everything feels like it is happening because of something in the series. This is a thought Kino is having, or this is like the noise that the country is making, or something like that. So it's just like your mind doesn't process it as music most of the time, except for the most dramatic moments.
It's the thing. Soundtrack is. I'm gonna make a really weird comparison here. The soundtrack kind of works in the same way the Breath of the Wild soundtrack works, in that it's like it's a very in the background. It's not. I hesitate to use the word ambient, because ambient is an unfair way of sort of describing it. But for a lot of it, it is, it is melded into the sound design. But it only really comes to the front and the surface, obviously, in the same way the Breath of the Wild does, when there is action or when there is a particularly important moment. I feel is a weird comparison to make, but there we go. The animation on this is done by AGC. Let me get this in the correct translation. ACGT. Apart from Kino's Journey, they seem to be most famous for doing a lot of Initial D stuff.
And to be fair, if you did a lot of Initial D in the 2000s, you were making money. And they also did something infamous from the Infinite Rainy Day, which is Dice Area.
Oh Jesus! I've just spotted it. Oh God.
What?
I've just spotted Dice Areas on there. Oh God.
Were you on that podcast for that one?
Because I don't believe so. It looks a very strange series.
Yeah, it was the one where we were just most confused, because it's a terrible series. It's basically the first episode makes you think it's about the Nazis being the good guys. They aren't, but like the first episode sure makes it look like they are, and then the rest is just like it is a. It is written by the person who did the visual novel, and the visual novel has no idea how to make a series or how to make the plot flow for a series. So we were just talking like, wait, did that happen? Did this happen? It's very confusing, and also it's Nazi shit. So, I mean, eventually it admits Nazis are the bad guys, but it sure takes its time.
Yeah, and ACGT is mostly famous for sort of otherwise in between work. There's nothing on here apart from, I mean, they basically do sub stuff. I mean, stuff I've never bloody heard. Most of the stuff I've never bloody heard of. The only other series I vaguely recognise on this, bizarrely enough, is Dai Shogun, which is a really silly series, and they did a Kickstarter, and that's about it. The other team involved with this is Genko, who are a long-term collaborator with ACGT. They're mostly a producing company. The script is a little bit longer, and they also did Serial Experiments Lain, both series of Azumanga Daioh, Millennium Actress, Ikitosen, oh dear, Elfin Light. There's a lot of stuff. I'm recognising a lot more stuff on it. Oh god, they did. They did a lot of Ikitosen and Rin, Daughters of the Memnoscene, a series we are never going to talk about. And both seasons of Sword Art Online. Oh god, run.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Right. Anyway.
But also, the other big name on here is Sadayuki Mirai, who is a screenwriter who is not a household name, but he has worked with everyone.
Yeah.
He did episodes of Cowboy Bebop. He wrote the screenplay to Perfect Blue. He also wrote the screenplay for Steam Boy, so obviously they're not all winners, but he has worked with some of the most popular people. And, also in this same band, he worked on Boogie Pop Phantom, which was another series that was in the early 2000s and not the more recent Boogie Pop and others. Yeah. But it's made mostly by the people who made Lain and who wanted to do more stuff like Lain that was exactly like it. So it doesn't surprise, I'm in the Haibane Renmei fandom, but there's this set up a group of shows that we all sort of get into, and they kind of vary. There are some others, considering how proper, quote unquote proper, they're like the normal people who are Elven Lied even gets in there sometimes.
Yeah.
Higurashi is in there, depending. And then we have, Haibane, Renmei, this, and Mushishi.
Yep.
Which Sadayuki Mirai worked on the live action version of it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of these similar people like working on the same thing, same things, and like they have there's a vibe of just like really thinking about this, really bringing it out, and which is why there was this fandom that circles around all of this stuff, because this was
that
one. It was around the anime. Yeah. It was around the anime boom when it started getting popular in the United States before it had the crash, and all of these people got their budgets taken away, and so what got big, and then when people went back and it's like, okay, I want to look more. These were the things that were getting licensed at the time, and just before that, and it's what they had available before they got so much choices that like rental stores like went bankrupt and stuff like that or they had to sell their entire stock because they had like so many single volumes.
Oh god, yeah. So I mean, I can vaguely remember that era. Or I mean, obviously lesser as we've discussed in the UK, because we weren't obviously at the vanguard of that wave, but there was still like you go into the local lending library and oh my god, there's Elfen Lied. That's a bit violent. It's like, oh my god.
That was at a Walmart. You could find it at a Walmart, and it's just like, oh dear. And
it's peculiar you mention Mushishi, because this is the series I would compare them to. They are both very episodic. They are both essentially driven by their main character. And obviously they go, but they have a similar, at least with the 2003 series, a similar sort of vibe, I would say. I don't know if you would agree with me on that, or
I would. It's just there is a more active part in Kino's journey, which Mushishi, I always say as it's a really well-made sleeping aid.
Oh
because
god,
I have literally fallen asleep during an episode of Mushishi, but they're like absolutely devastating, destroying episodes, and like there's like I really felt Kino's journey, whereas, I got what Mushishi was putting across, but I didn't feel it. So,
and that's perspective. That's perspective, I think, because obviously, it is perspective. I feel that the vibe that they have a similar vibe, but sort of Kino's journey is more like, I don't know, reading a story from a collection of stories every night, whereas Mushishi is like, nice little bedtime story sort of thing with a little bit of supernatural elements. The other sort of major figure in this series is obviously the voice of Kino, which is Ai Maeda, who is basically famous for this and being in, bizarrely enough, Battle Royale 2.
Shiori Kitano.
Yep, Shiori Kitano. Her sister is also...
She was also in the first one.
Yeah. Oh, she was in the first one as well? Okay. Oh yeah, she was indeed, Shiori Kitano. And a couple of Godzilla films, and a couple of Death Note films. And yeah, that's basic. And also doing the song for The Beautiful World. This is like basically her career. Her sister is also an actress and voice actress. Occasional. She was her younger sister, who is Aki Maeda, was Yuki in The Cat Returns. Yay! Yay! Also in quite a number of Gamera films for some reason. Anyway, well, that's what it is. Okay, strange little niche of anime. She's voiced in English, by the way, by Kelly Cousins. Who again, this really seems to be her most famous role. She also did some of the ADR script for Cromartie High School and Slayers. That's we're dealing with a strange little sort of like cult. I don't mean this in a rude way.
Oh, by the way, I just want to throw something in there for you. And the actor of Hermes, Cynthia Martinez, was Lena Inverse in ADV's adaptations of all of the Slayers. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's that. You know, this, as I said, but though this is obviously this is an ADV dub. I take it because I recognise some of the. Oh god, yeah, Chris Patton.
Yeah, it is Miss. The Vic Mignogna, who we'll get into that.
No.
Because like there is this feeling that everybody knew who Vic Mignogna kind of was in from their casting.
Yeah. Yeah. This is to go back very, very, very briefly. This is so. The one thing I would say about Kino's journey before we sort of travel too much on our journey, is this initial series is very difficult to get hold of in physical format now. I think it's
not so much. I will in Great Britain probably. In America there is Sentai Filmworks which is ADV after ADV, and we'll see if they ever get a financial reckoning. But while they are constantly doing sales, they do have it is a standard definition Blu-ray release, which it still looks very pretty. It's still very good. It's just they shoved 13 episodes in standard definition onto one Blu-ray, and it looks fine. It looks perfectly fine. I went through the whole thing. So you can get that for a reasonable price. The DVDs, I haven't checked the prices since we do have a Blu-ray release, but you can get it, and it's also on High Dive Digital, but that's North America. I don't know how many other countries you can do that for.
Yeah. The novels are also not in English. The novels have never been.
No.
The novels have released for one volume in English. One volume in English.
One volume was released by Tokyo Pop, who did a very basic translation. It feels dumbed down, and they changed the order into linear order, which made people mad. And it's just like, I have a copy of it, and it's worth a whole lot of money. And I had the second one on pre-order until they canceled it, so I was still interested. But because like
Tokyo Pop,
I don't know how Tokyo Pop. It never happened, and I'm sure they'll release a Masterpiece collection. I'm not going to buy it just because I didn't buy Aria Masterpiece, because you still need to pay your fucking artists.
Yep. So yeah, if you are a licensor listening to this, do you know what? That would be there are 23 novels. They are still being written as of November 2020. I think they're still coming out. You could just jump on that, and would make the 10 or 15 people in the Kino fandom, which is me and Joe and 8 other people at this point, very, very happy.
Okay.
Yeah. So, where shall we start with this? Because we could go chronologically through each episode and go, this is what happens in this episode.
What I want to start with is what makes this an extremely good adaptation, which is the first episode, and I apologize, I'm probably going to have to spoil it to tell you what it all does correctly. And I did this like in my essay for Infinite Rainy Day when I did a review of the new one, and I did my recollecting of the old one. So this first episode, there's an introduction, which is what does the traveler need, and that is luck, which will come back around at the last episode, and this will pay off. There are a lot of little things and little theories that are put forth that why this is an extremely good series, and why it hits the way it does. But and then it adapts The Country of Visible Pain, which is a good introduction to the Land of Shared Pain. Excuse me. It's a basic Kino story, and it starts well in the middle of when they're on their journey, but it does explain when they go to the hotel. It explains this relationship between Kino and Hermes, who is the talking motorad motorcycle, and how they go into countries every 3 days, and they put how this story works it's built into this story naturally, so you don't feel like they're like struggling to tell you plot details or something like that. But they have this time when they're talking with each other and reflecting on what they've done. So it's a good time because there are no people in this town where they visit or this country's. They're just robots and everything is cheap. And then they find out everybody lives in the countryside. And then everybody runs away when they pass by, except this one person who is caught by surprise because he's watering his garden. And he's like, oh, you can't read my mind. And I can't read yours. It's like, come in. And then he tells the story of how everybody in the country decided to take this medicine that allows them to read each other's thoughts. So now we can be united because we can't read. And it's specifically on this night, he found out that this girl he likes him. And so they got together and got married. But then, like, they read each other's thoughts that they learned that they didn't like each other's hobbies. They didn't like this, and then they decided to just hide all of their thoughts, but they knew they were hiding each other's thoughts, and it was a minuscule microcosm of how the entire country broke apart because they couldn't hide. So you can't hide your negative thoughts when you're frustrated with somebody or something like that. And so the country just kind of burned down and everybody moved out to the countryside where they couldn't. And this is where Ryotaro Nakamura's and Sakurai came in. Because I have the short story right here next to me, and I've read it. And at the end, there's not this epilogue to the story. I mean, there's a normal epilogue where it starts raining in the desert, and then Kino's like, you know, the greatest thing a traveler can have is luck. But that's not it. There is this little epilogue to this story of this country where they are going outside, they're saying their goodbyes, and one of the hobbies the man said that he didn't like that his wife did was gardening. And at the end, like, he's leaving and he is gardening a garden of roses, which his wife used to do. And then when they're driving by, there's this house that has this record that he was playing while he was talking about what happened to his country. And because he liked music, his wife didn't like music, and she is listening to the same record he was. So there is this isn't in the novel. It was just, the novel kind of just stops and they go on their way. But there's this little epilogue that's kind of sweet and bittersweet that, like, even though this country fell apart, there were things that they could learn for it. There's, like, a little hope that they can maybe come back together after. Or it could be bittersweet in that they didn't realize that, you know, they were connected to each other. They did have this special connection, and they don't know that there's this way back, or that they left a lasting impression on each other that can be mended. So there's that. Like it says, it doesn't have a message, but it leaves a, you know, feeling that just kind of lingers there to think about.
Yeah, and I take it there. Obviously, you are familiar with the actual original stories. I take it. Are there a lot of these embellishments, or
some of them are taken more or less. Colosseum especially adds some depth to the characters and changes a few things around. Colosseum is a two-parter, even. It was slightly longer. It was, you know, about 40 pages. There's some such in the book. So it was a little longer than the normal ones, but, like, it didn't have that much depth. And it has a different focus, and it had a different focus in the new anime series. The new anime series had it as one episode. It skipped through all of the characters and, like, all of their backstories and that. And its main thing was introducing Kino's substitute teacher, which this series doesn't get into that. Like, the guy with the talking dog is essentially Kino's substitute teacher. They are on a voyage to find a home. They are on the opposite end of Kino's, but they find everybody else has such horrendous, lives, well, not lives, just like they don't like, people from other countries as much, and they lay down the laws for them, and there's no way for them to find a home there, and that's where they continue. And they eventually get a child named T, and eventually there is a reoccurring character named Photo, who is a former slave who becomes a photographer, and that's why their name's Photo. But not even the new series gets into that very much. She's in the open. She gets one episode where she's a slave and they free her, but other than that, she is not in the new series, and they don't do much with her. No. So there were a lot more things developed, but this is 2004. This is what they had. And they put everything down to tell the story what they wanted, which is, I think, extremely good for the series, because just knowing this, it's kind of a wink in the Colosseum episode where Hermes has a conversation with the dog, and they kind of there's the end where it's like, a talking dog, now you're being ridiculous, Hermes. And the other guy's like, a talking motorcycle.
Yeah, I mean, they
have the LOL.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, even the 2017 series obviously has a lot more. I assume a lot more novel it can adapt, and obviously, if one was to do an adaptation of it today, you have 23 volumes of short stories to adapt. You've got to, for brevity, and obviously for some form of cohesion somewhere in the narrative, you've got to basically pick and choose. And that was, I believe, the format they did for the 2017. If I'm correct.
Yeah, they did a fan poll, and then the worst part is, like, some of the people working on the series chose their own episodes, and they chose the worst ones. Like, it ends on a joke episode about animals that are children of like fighting animals, like dog fighting and chicken fighting and all that. Like the rams in this case, and they learned how to kill from their parents, and which is not how this works. It's like I don't dislike it because it is a comedy story about killing a bunch of rams, and it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous to the point where you're supposed to not take it seriously, but the premise of it is built on a dangerous premise of why certain dog breeds and certain other things that are used for fighting are banned, and it has a negative impact on our world that causes unfair persecution to certain animals. Like, this is not how this works. Most animals would like to just exist just fine, and they probably do, but this one says it's like the country got fighting built into their genetics, and so all they do is just let these animals out, and LOL, because they did the right thing, they're getting punished because all the animals are attacking them on the countryside. Isn't this funny? And it's just like, no, it's not.
And then the series ended.
Then the series ended. This joke is not funny.
Yeah.
It is not funny.
No. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna make another really weird comparison. I do actually realize where I feel that how would I explain this to like a non-anime audience? This is sort of like, yeah, I'm gonna fuck it. I'm gonna go for a really weird comparison. The structure of this sort of reminds me of Doctor Who.
Okay.
It's not, there is obviously like an overarching thing, but it is episodic. You go into this situation, and this situation is, here is a, obviously in terms of Doctor Who and, Kino, here is a place where the rules of the world are different, or this has happened, or that has happened, and the other thing has happened, and, obviously with Doctor Who, there is a lot more, how am I going to put this? Tinkering with the situation, whereas Kino, it tends to be throughout most of this a fairly passive observer for most of the series. I mean, that is Kino is. It's not that Kino is on like some sort of Star Trek. Oh, we mustn't interfere with the locals sort of thing. It's more like she goes through. It's. I mean, also like Kino's pronouns are a little bit like question mark. Obviously, yeah.
We can get into that a little bit more, just because like there are people who can, Kino does not sweat gender. Yeah. Like Kino is not specifically like,
Yeah.
Non-gendered, but Kino does not sweat it. Like, there is a in the Coliseum, they call him boy for the longest time, and Kino corrects them in the book. I don't think he corrects them. It's not until later they realize Kino's biologically female.
Yeah.
And then that becomes a part of the plot. But at the beginning, they just keep calling him boy. But Kino corrects them at the beginning in the light novel, which I don't know. It's just they didn't want to. I don't think they didn't want to sweat anything for the point of just getting to the plot and getting to this world and going to that more. So they just they didn't worry about it, and
and obviously you can if you choose, this is the thing. It's sort of like some characters, for example, like Clamp seems to go in for a lot of characters who are use what in obviously you got to remember Japanese has the way that Japanese uses gender in language is far more it is far easier to have a character describe themselves in non-gendered terms in a way that I don't think is possible in English. You can have characters use a masculine way of speaking when they are female presenting, and vice versa, and you can infer what you like from a character in that way. But if you obviously Kino has been adopted and Kino has been heralded and whatever as a gender, a romantic character, and if that is what you pull for the thing, and you go that it makes me really happy that there is a character who goes, I'm Kino, rather than going, I'm a boy or a girl. That is part that all power to you, and that is something you can get out of this series. Absolutely, as I said, it is a series, as Joe quite rightly said, it is a series that everybody can find a little bit of something that will be
like that. There's a blurb on the back of the Tokyo thing, like Kino's my hero, and it's from the editor-in-chief of Cosmo Girl. So, if you want to find your, woman hero, there she can do.
Yeah.
Kino can be a she. Like, I think I tried to do non-binary pronouns when I think I did let a she go once or twice, but I don't think it's strictly non-binary. They just don't sweat it that much, and it's part of them absorbing what the country is and does, and how it treats things.
Yeah, and certainly the art style in the 2003 series compared to the 2017 series is a lot more. Kino is a person-shaped character who is like Kino looks very more. Curiously enough, actually, this is something I'm really going to pay the 2003 series a compliment here. Kino looks far more androgynous and sort of non-binary looking in the 2003 series than in the 2017 series, to my opinion.
Yeah, and that goes to the animation style, just replicating the books and being a work of its own, and it all feels like like I said, it all feels like an organic part. It's a lot of earthly colors. It's a lot of greens, greens and browns, and just stuff that's lived in, and not a lot of I want to say form-fitting outfits. The only people who wear really outrageous anime stuff is the the king in the Coliseum or something, somebody who is really trying to live out there, or who is trying to, I don't want to say just elite, but somebody who is far beyond the normal people. And this is just this is what we have where we are living in this turn of the century world. There are motorcycles, but we need to figure out a place to get it repaired and get gas, and that it's still a world you can explore, and it is still a world that for the most part is without flight. So there's a lot of unknown, and there's a lot of exploration that is still possible. And it is a world that is still evolving, but technologically advanced enough that you can explore it.
Yeah, and the setting of this is great. The setting of this is I'm trying to think of another anime that has this sort of like sense that the world is still unexplored in the same way that Kino's Journey does it. I'm trying to think of anything. Obviously there's some, it's I'm gonna hesitate. I'm hesitating to say Ghibli-esque because there's obviously you could say any anime set with a sort of turn of the century vibe is anime-esque, is Ghibli-esque, because that's that's just,
or anything that's more thoughtful in how it creates its world or its people and the little details. So okay, I suppose we should this isn't going to be a linear story in the sense in which we talk about each individual along the way and how the plot goes, because that's not how this works. Although there is a theory on how this plot works, is that it is running backwards, except for the flashbacks to Kino when they were a child. The series is it starts when Kino is fully sure of themselves, and it goes backwards to where they are the most unsure of themselves. So as you'll notice, Kino, when they get into trouble in the early series, it's rough, but they can handle it. They can always handle it. And then later on, they are so unsure of themselves and so panicked and just so bitter and sure of themselves when they do everything that they are jittery. They are they lean on sarcasm as a crutch at one point, and there is less of this kind of Buddhist sense of self or this letting the world happen and just acting as water around it.
I totally agree. I could totally agree with that theory. One of the things I really like about Kino, by the way, is just as a character, is it's sort of how do I say this? The episode 2, which is obviously where you see Kino as an extremely accomplished fighter. She is armed to the teeth.
They do kind of do a joke that when they ask him to strip and whatever.
Kino.
Kino. When they ask Kino to strip, they have so many knives that it's almost like one of those parody things. Holy shit! How do you have so many knives? And they only have 2 guns. They have the Persuader and the Man of the Forest. If that's not the name of the Persuader, Kino has 2 guns. And they have different names, and then a bunch of knives and a bunch of survivalist stuff, because they exist off the world as much as they can, and it's by what they are able to figure out.
So I mean, it would be easy for us to just sort of jump from episode to episode. I just like to let me put it this: Joe, what is your favorite episode of this of the series?
That is actually hard to say.
Oh wow! Okay, that was not because,
well, it's very different. The one I appreciate the most is the 3rd episode, which is the Land of Prophecy. And I'm going to tell you straight up, it is very hard to find anything that changes the way you look at the world. And the Land of Prophecy did, especially religion as its involvement with government and
salient at the moment.
Salient at the moment.
Never not salient.
Never not salient. But it's also interpretations and just how if you ignore this is up for interpretation, this is a very individual thing, and you stack it to an entire government. What that exactly does and how much that harm that does, and the end of the episode is extremely it kind of comes out of nowhere because there's a side story in the middle about this country who doesn't know what their traditions are, so they keep trying out this tradition, not realizing their tradition is already trying out different traditions when they go there.
Yeah.
And you could kind of throw that into Kino, and they're trying to figure out who they are, and they keep going to different countries, and you could relate to that, and how she kind of like smiles and realizes it. But then at the end of that, there is this last beat where the soldier comes in, and like they go to this country where they find out the Book of Prophecy is this poem this man was forced to write for this king after, like his wife died and he lost everything. So they killed his wife. They killed his wife because he wasn't making the saddest poem. Then he just started saying the saddest poem ever endlessly. Yeah. And then after he died, it was like, okay, we're not going to be that present. Then his daughter started doing it, and then they just made it a tradition. And that is the Book of Prophecy two other countries are using as their Bible.
Yeah.
And at the end, one finds out that their interpretation is they need to flatten that country over there.
Yeah.
And that was the country Kino visited at the start of the episode, and it's just like it hits you like a ton of bricks.
Oh god, yeah, because it's just we're just gonna basically flatten it. Oh,
yeah, and it's just like you need to know what you wield, and you need to know that you can't just wield the authority of God's power like this or religious power like this because it is dangerous.
Yeah.
And it is just like, it is such a, the way it is delivered was such a eye-opening thing, and it's just like, and it went from a really good series, because the first two episodes are good. The first one is kind of like, it sets its tone, and it has its own little Twilight Zone story about, reading others' thoughts. And then the second one is a great short story that discusses the value of life, and just like, it is, I like talking about it will spoil everything, but it is about the value of life and the tragedy of when that life is not valued.
Yeah.
And it's really a lot to think about, especially when I was a high schooler. We did an economics thing, and I once read how many like gallons or liters or something of water is required for a human to live today, and that includes how much water the food used to grow or to eat, and what they eat, how much water that used to grow, and how much water did we need in the gasoline and all of that. And it goes to something about 144,000 like gallons, liters, something to that effect, for a person to live a day based on everything that has led them up to that.
Yeah.
Which is like, so that kind of, it is about that kind of value of life, and it makes you think about it. And especially the ending, which is just what happens when it's wasted, and are we wasting it how we're doing it, or something like that.
Yeah, and it's that in that episode that we do see Kino's really ruthless side. Like there is understandably so.
Yes, there are two things that especially piss off Kino: fascism and slavery, and she does not stand. Don't stand for either. So, this is at the point where they have figured out what to do, and thankfully got very lucky in one certain instance. But they have, in a sense, formed what they are and what they can stand. Even they don't have an identity specifically, except for the fourth episode, where it goes back and says how Kino became Kino, because Kino as a child was a little girl with a flower name that can be changed into something that can make fun of her. There are gosh, I wish I had the old home thing in front of me, or I could tell you exactly what the flower was in Japanese, because this will come back later. So she meets a traveler named Kino, but the country has this thing called the Land of Adults, where after a certain date, they get a surgery that cuts out all of the childhood, and they just become an adults who smile no matter what. Yeah. Which is its own, like,
horrifying
thing, especially
genuinely unnerving,
unsettling.
Yeah,
it is very, especially like in modern, because we are just, you know, smiling and being proper people while we are, you know, committing genocide or something like that. Like right now, ceasefire now, trans rights.
Yep.
And
both of those,
like all of the a little bit of those, and
yep.
we do the opposite of that, like it's all normal. Like this is a normal thing, and the people who don't want the genocide, the people who don't want the trans people to exist are just going, who want trans people to exist are the odd ones out, and they need to be eliminated. And there is like, it has continually upped its resonance throughout the year. It started like, this is a very unsettling and suddenly story, and now it's modern. And
one thing I do, this is a more general overview of the entire thing. I mean, this was obviously made, you got to consider, this was made in April. This was April through, let me have a look, April through July 2003, when the Americans were gearing up for the Second Gulf War. You know, there is a lot of, like, you know, obviously, you know, there were obviously the views on both sides of the thing in Japan, but obviously, you know, a lot of people in the animation industry tend to lean a little bit to the left, and obviously, you know, you have people like Hayao Miyazaki who refused to turn up to pick up his Oscar for Spirited Away because the Americans were currently at that point bombing the shit out of Iraq.
And there were intentional things based on that, like the first Full Metal Alchemist series was openly about the Iraq War and how much they hated it.
The manga obviously certainly was as well.
Okay.
Definitely,
Okay, but I remember when I worked at Anime Insider magazine, like just before I left, they had to make a choice to cut out all references to the Iraq War in their interview with the creators of Full Metal Alchemist, because they were open about it. They were very clear. Everything was not a coincidence. Everything was intentional. And also a little note, I don't mean to take out his point, but like the main writer of the first Full Metal Alchemist series also did Angel Cop, the original script where it's about how the Jews are secretly invading Japan. So there's a little give and take with that. I'm not going to both sides that, because there on all of it there's a very evil thing, and like all people don't fall on like entirely evil sides, but there is a very clear you know, there is a suggestion that people throw onto like the protests of anti-Zionist stuff, and then they can attach that, and there are people they can attach that to like that. So anyway, we're getting too deep on that, but
I mean,
in any case,
I mean, there's certainly, obviously, you know, the Iraq War was started between episodes 2 and 3 of this airing. I don't know whether you can go, oh, there would, you know, this is, you know, there is a lot, but there's a lot of stuff that can absolutely be read, particularly episode 12, which is, you know, obviously about militarized warfare, and, you know, certain aspects of this, which, you know, can be definitely read through a prism of, the Americans are bombing the shit out of a country for basically trumped up.
But and the thing about this is that they have dozens of examples to work otherwise.
Completely,
this is just a continuation of a thing we were blind to in the 90s and nobody else was. So this
War
was
never changes. War never changes.
The war never changes.
War.
Yeah. Yes, I understand. I understand the reference. There is that constant resonance, which is what keeps this series
relevant.
This version of the series relevant.
Yeah.
And the new one, it doesn't even like try to be resonant to itself. Like I said, I think I had a conversation with my wife earlier. Like there are 2 blatantly connected episodes that are in the new series, and they are not connected to each other. They are made to be single serving, and it is an emotional slam dunk, and they don't do it. And it's just, it speaks to this was just a job.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that it was directed by the guy who did Persona 4 Golden, who
had
who had 3 or 4 choices on what he could have done as far as making a new series with the pieces they took from Persona 4 Golden. But he didn't. He just, like, every episode felt like it was different, and it was just a mishmash of material that was in Golden that wasn't in the original Persona. But they didn't make a choice, and so it's nothing. It's a couple good episodes and just stuff made to make money.
Lovely. That's a metaphor there about the general Persona 4 Golden release.
I will defend some things about Golden.
Yeah.
I will say there are certain parts of Golden that do not make sense without what they added, and what completely. They added that makes it the most sense is what the people most complain about. Marie. So I'll say that, Maria, and I will kick everybody's ass in Persona Arena, the second one, Ultimax, with that character.
Yep.
And laugh if they complain that why did I choose such a shit character?
Yeah,
laugh all the way, because...
And I'll be laughing with him. I'm gonna pick a slightly... I would agree with you. It is very difficult to pick a particular episode I like. The episode I admire the most, I think, is... It's a tie between, I think, episode 5 and episode 10.
Oh, the tracks one. That's a surprising one.
Yeah. I think there's like a really, there is a sense of, I'm intrigued why you're surprised by that, Joe.
I don't know. It was one of the lesser episodes. When I watched it, I forget it's there until I watch it, and it's kind of like the flight one. Although I don't want to say both episodes are really good, and they just they don't hit you in that way that stays with you at the end. I mean,
but perhaps
they kind of sort of. I don't know. Maybe it's because at the end it's about democracy and how you can twist that, but also that's the end of the story, and it kind of feels like a footnote. So
and that's fair, but I feel it's it's an important breathing space between the sort of the two essentially the 3 episodes, if we're going to be honest, about where I think Kino goes through the majority of their character development, which is obviously the 2-part Colosseum episode, and then the here is all of Kino's backstory episode. Those are both excellent episodes. I also just like episode 10 because there's just a sense of that. I mean, remove Kino and you basically have a really good Ray Bradbury sort of short story there.
That's the
robot? The dolls one, yeah.
The dolls, yes. And you kind of picked it's weird that you picked the ones that are my least favorite. I mean, they are very good, like I said, they are very good episodes, but they are kind of the most short story, and they kind of fit more into the greater narrative than they fit in the... And they're not... The ones that are definitely, they leave their emotional mark. All of the episodes in this series are good to great.
Yeah.
Or I would say they are 8 to 10.
Yeah, there's nothing below an 8 out of 10 episode.
Nothing below 8.
Yeah.
In this entire thing. And those would be the ones I would put an 8.
Yeah.
And they fit into the greater narrative, which I think it's amazing that they fit so much into these short stories that are so differently. There's this sense of duty, and there's this sense of doing what other people say or doing what your society says. And it definitely crashes between this and what Kino decides to do with themselves and how they think about and view life, because it isn't always what they think everybody is doing their duty or what they think is good for society, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's extremely bad, and there are lines that cross where Kino can't let the society continue as it is, as we see in Colosseum.
Yeah.
But sorry, I kind of hijacked that one. Go on.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, I just like these two episodes because they capture for me, I think, how Kino works. They are obviously smaller pieces, and obviously, they are certainly more intimate stories, particularly in terms of mechanical dolls. But they are also, they do flesh out Kino as a character. It's like, particularly obviously mechanical dolls, where it's like, what can we be? These dolls essentially eventually go, obviously have lost their purpose, and they're sort of, crowd going to Kino, what can we to you? Can we be your parents? Can we be, your adversaries? And
brother, like, your wife, your whatever else.
Yeah, and it's like, and Kino turns them down, and they destroy themselves.
Yeah, and it is that thing where, that thing where Kino pushes against that. These people have to have a purpose. They have to have a necessary point in their lives where they fit into society, and Kino does not need that. They just need what they need to do is find themselves, and I think that a lot of that series is finding themselves and how they became this, which is kind of the last 3 episodes in the series, because the last 3 episodes are very different than like how Kino has been going about. Like, Kino is openly frustrated and openly sarcastic and almost mocking of the people they visit in the countries. Like, there is the person who is preaching about nonviolence, but the only reason she can do that is she is surrounded by a person who loves them, who will kill everybody who tries to get in her way, or anybody on the road. And Kino obviously doesn't react well to that, and they don't react well to this bodyguard who is out of prison after murdering somebody's husband, and they make a deal that the only way they're going to do this is become their bodyguard. And what she does is immediately take his gun the moment they get out of town, and she shoots him to death and kills him. Because what did you think was going to happen? Yeah. And
to which Kino is just basically a completely passive bystander, which, considering we've seen Kino, leap into action to defend, people. Yeah. People who, basically morally are a little bit grey, morally grey, it's a little bit of a shock. It's like, hang on a minute.
And then it just, the reason people say it goes backwards is because all these last 3 episodes build on each other. And we have the Land of Peace, where we figure out how they get to peace is essentially killing brown people.
Yep.
Is they get together and they kill a bunch of brown people, and whoever kills the most wins. Proxy war. I mean, not quite a proxy war, because they do it themselves, but it is not on their territory. It is not their land, and they essentially do it to these natives. Yeah. And then Kino, when they are leaving, and the natives are like, we need to kill you because this isn't right, and something needs to be done to make this right.
Nope.
And Kino essentially has to open fire on a bunch of innocent natives because, like, they welcomed you, they took you, and you were a part of them. You were up there watching it, so you are as much of a part of them.
Yeah.
And then we get thrown the last episode, which is essentially Kino seeing their life as it would have been if she wasn't in the whacked out country that took your childhood.
Yeah, if the parallels weren't, immediately obvious. It's like, hey, these. Yeah, this is very much a, this is. Yeah, it's almost doing the A Wonderful Life sort of thing of going, hey, this is what your life would be like if you hadn't left, and if your parents weren't, completely insane, and that's...
There is a bitter... And it starts everything essentially on their journey to who they are now, which is what they continue to be, 23 volumes in. They changed some rules. Like the modern one says they will stay in a country longer than 3 days. They've broken some rules because they've been imprisoned or whatever else. But what it starts with is Lily, who is the child of an innkeeper, which she was when, she was a child. And who was so excited about their life, and she gets made fun of, silly Millie Lily, because like she was made fun of for being the name of a flower. And it the only reason it doesn't feel forced is because there's a distance between these two where you kind of don't realize it until you think about it later, or you watch it a second time. But at the end, it's revealed like the entire civilization is going to die.
Yeah.
And spoilers, I'm very sorry. And
we're an hour in, Joe. We're an hour in.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And the parents try to push Lily there, and she can't do it because all she wants to be is an innkeeper when she grows up. And there is the separation between Kino and the life they could have had and the life everybody else has, is that they are in this destiny. This is what they are supposed to be in life, and they are fine with it. And Kino is not. They are going on this travel, which is the translation because Kino never has a destination, so they argue, why is it called journey? Because journey is more active than travel, and it's like there is a point, and I think there is like the point where it starts after they found themselves, and it goes back to finding themselves. So it's the journey to finding Kino, how they exist in the most bullshitting, ass-pulling, but I have plenty of examples on it is the journey to find Kino.
Yeah, definitely.
At the end of this.
Because Kino's not her real name. Kino is like this entire... Okay, Kino is this entire identity. She's basically...
She's stolen.
Stolen off a dead man.
Yeah, because the person is like... The traveler is like, do you want to come with me? And... essentially, they turn murderers to this guy because, like, if they fuck up her, they fuck up their entire society. So they can't allow that, which is whatever they did to their brain makes them entirely homicidal, and also kill Kino because she's defective.
Yep.
So
that was a really shocking. That was a really shocking episode. Actually.
It is really shocking. The new version, it's still effective. They try to put more shocking stuff, but it's like it's very subtle in this one, and it's very unsettling, like how it is in real society, how like we are living while the world is burning down, and how we are well, everybody is pleasantly nodding and taking away the rights of people, and they are pretending it's all proper. We are all in a proper society right now, and that's
and I feel that,
how it does.
And I feel the visual style sort of lends itself to it. It's occasionally like you know, perhaps because this visual style has essentially become, because it is quite similar to obviously how a lot of, moe anime looks today, because it is a very simple and actually, quite charming little, and frankly quite cute art style for a lot of the time. When there are these explosions of violence, it's like there is compared to the 2017 series where everything is a typical 2017 anime, it looks it looks and feels more shocking to me, at least.
It also doesn't help that the 2017 series starts, it's not a very good intro for Kino, but it also starts with Kiichi Sigsawa's like gun rights stuff, where they go to a country with no laws, and essentially there's these people who are like, oh, we're so gonna rape you when we get here, and blah blah blah, and then it turns out like all the people without laws, they kill the people who are like think they're lawless. They essentially gather them up and kill them because they are going to be a blight, and it's like they are the responsible gun owners, but like it's like that is. It's kind of like, I can disagree with Kiichi Sigsawa, but I can still put this in my top 3 of anime. Like that is very different than the way like American stuff is, where it's just like
you gotta remember,
American stuff is don't have to be held responsible for anything I do. I can do I can live with as much land. I can dump whatever I want on it. I can have whatever. I can own a tank. I can do whatever.
There is a tank. There is a tank.
Speaking of tank,
there's a tank.
Special shout out to the library episode, which is I feel gets underrated.
Yeah, the library episode's great. It's just like it starts.
It is just this weird meta everything episode, and it doesn't go where you think it does. Like the only thing it absolutely trashes is critics, which obviously a book writer is going to do.
Yeah, it's very meta texture, very much going. No, you must not read the naughty books. The naughty books are are being kept away under lock and key. And this. By the way, I'm the librarian. I'm part of an organization that wants to basically rescue the authors who have written bad and naughty things. And it's like if you're locked in the castle, you become a literature critic, and you will have to criticize what you're enjoying because that's what literary criticism is, totally.
And it's a wild episode, just like how it's meta in every single, like there are 4 or 5 different layers on it, and to which go towards the characters, like when like the person they meet, the author at the beginning, like they get a book and they're reading it, and it's a story of a talking floating tank that talks to them, and like, wow, this motorcycle's really a lot like me, and Kino, it seems a lot like you. Yes. And it's like, but it's ridiculous. It's a talking tank, and it ends on the talking tank that they meet by the side of the road.
Yep. I have a tank. I'm looking for this other tank, which looks like this, and tank drives away, and it's like, this is the tank. Wait a minute, this is the tank. You are the tank you're looking for. Oh no.
Yeah, but they don't realize it. No. And it's just so much of that, everything looping back on itself.
Yeah.
And it's just that self-reflection of Kino's journey that the whole series has, and it even points it back on itself. And that is the great joy of this series, and why I can just watch it most of the time, and why it's in my top 3, even though most of the time people like serial stuff more than episodic. It's like everything in this is a perfect adaptation of its source material. Like everything, it changes stuff, and there's a lot more depth in Coliseum, where they add a couple things like the rose bush or whatever else, but it brings the voice, the style, and everything else of the novels to life in a way that perfectly expresses what they are trying to do.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the greatest compliment I can give it. I mean, everything is built to the service of making this the best adaptation of it be. The visuals, the sound, the writing, the acting, the everything.
Yeah. The English dub of this is actually pretty good. Considering it's an 2003.
I will. There is one note. There is one note. Like the original acting is, Hermes is more of a robot. Like, obviously because it is a robotic. And you can't sense like the sarcasm or anything else off of them. Like sometimes when they'll threaten Kino, but we'll take very good care of you, Hermes, after we kill Kino. And they just say it in a very robotic way, how very nice of you. And you can't sense the sarcasm. Or Hermes in the English version is a child. And you can kind of tell more their emotions. But those are 2 very valid readings. And I don't know and how you can go about it, because like Hermes is a child. Like they don't know about this world because they've just been stuck in this corner for rusting for a while, and they're essentially a new being. And you can take that as a child, or you can take that as a literal result of them being a robot who doesn't understand humans. So like this is a case where you can have 2 different takes and still have the same quality.
Yeah, and that's the thing, for considering, it is a very, very well put together anime. It's like,
and it stays with you, and it's stayed with me since I've watched it. I watched it on my last day. I was living in New Jersey after getting fired from Anime Insider magazine. They let me go because they needed to get a new intern. There was no way for me up. and it was just done. I was out of money, and I had to move back on my last penny. So,
Yeah.
My last thing I did was before moving out was watch the first single of this series, which is like the best single way back in the anime Gold Rush, where they sold like 5 episodes for $29.99 or $39.99.
Yep.
This was the single best 4 episodes I'd ever seen in a single
Package.
like DVD.
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
the first 4 episodes, like this series starts out on fire and it just keeps going.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing, this is like, what this series ends up with is if it has one moral, it is the world isn't beautiful, therefore it is.
And they repeat that. It starts with that, and it is a thought that goes back in Kino's mind, and this is after they've developed. And later, you'll get more like there'll be a bell ringing, and they get this subconscious thoughts, and it's just like, oh, who said that? When you see a bird, you want to go on a journey, and what happened with this, and it becomes more resonant as you learn more about Kino.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is after. Yeah, I really like this series. I mean, this is a series I know you've been meaning to. We were inevitably going to talk about this at some point.
We were going to talk about this whether you wanted to or not.
And I'm glad that we did. Oh.
All right, I think we're done. I think we should leave it to people to experience it, unless you have something else.
No, I think, as I said, I think this is, it is a cult series. I feel it deserves more eyes on it than it has done. It's surprisingly enough for a series that I don't hear people talk about often, seems to have a devoted fandom, considering this is something that's this is a series.
It is the corner of the late '90s, early 2000s deep thoughts anime corner, like Haibane, Renmei, and then we have Mushishi and whatever else. Boogie Pop Phantom, the early 2000s one. Like there was this serious thing of thought where they adapted the stories, but they made it into an anime that could exist on its own.
Yeah.
And that's what like Boogie Pop Phantom did, that Boogie Pop and others, like what the more recent one does, that just straight adapts the story, does that. It like they don't adapt the series perfectly, but they make a perfect adaptation, and that's I think what we get a lot out of a lot of these.
Yeah, things that were made with love, frankly, and they are made with love.
Absolutely. Okay. Well.
Yeah.
So where are we going next?
So where are we going next? Well, first, next episode, numbered episode. Bloody hell, we've done 2 numbered episodes in fairly quick succession. I'm still really happy about this. We'll be heading to. Actually, on a very short journey to New Jersey, we'll be talking about My Chemical Romance's 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. Anime-wise, it's my turn again. We will be talking about Baccano.
Baccano, okay.
Baccano.
I do have the DVD. I have the DVDs for that, so I can watch them.
Yay! Yeah, Baccano, which is going to be an interesting series to talk about, and I think the first time we will move beyond a 13-episode series. This is very
isn't?
Baccano is 16 episodes, Joe.
Oh, right.
It's one of those weird ones.
I've watched half of it. I haven't watched to the end of it, and I will for the sake of reviewing it, I have to watch the episodes. But I always keep thinking I'm going to watch Baccano again and then skip the first episode, and we'll get into why. We will indeed.
We will indeed. In its connection to another series, we will inevitably talk about at some point, because bloody hell, at some point we've got to talk about Durarara, or one of the first.
Or Durarara.
Yeah.
Whatever point we get to.
Yeah. we will also be talking about in the next few weeks, because this is going to be coming out fairly shortly, and then we're going to be moving on to we're going to be moving back on to anniversary episodes. What will we be talking about first on our anniversary slate this year, Joe?
We're going to be talking about Moby's play, and this is my fault. And this is going to be reckoning with my past, and talking about everything. I understand. Nobody cares, Moby. Nobody cares. And also, there's the part of it, the Natalie Portman creeper stuff, and kind of how he has been a creeper, and he'll just say things without thinking, and they're really not good thoughts that should be said out loud. And we'll deal with all of this. It will be an honest conversation about one of the marks of how I became a techno fan, or electronica, or whatever you want to call it. So it's an important part of my life that I have to talk about this in order to discuss everything else.
Yeah, and that might or may or not be coming out before our next episode. That will be coming out on the 17th of May, which will be the 25th anniversary of Play.
Okay.
That'll be
Play by Moby. Yes, that's what we're talking about.
Play by Moby. We can be found as usual on social media, on Twitter at NotSoFinalProd, and on Patreon at the Thom and Joe Show. Tom is spelt with a H. Yes.
That'll be all. Even though the journey never ends, this has to end. Otherwise, my computer will run out of memory, like it did during another anniversary one we recorded earlier. We
will. Till next time.
Just assume the journey's still going on, but we have to end this recording.
See you later. Bye.
Goodbye.